Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of In Lay Terms. I'm your host, Payman Asghari, and we have with us the PPC candidate of record for the riding of Thornhill, Mr. Amir Hart. Did I get all that right, Amir?
Candidate of record means that I ran in the last election,
Candidate of
or
record means that you're insecure and you don't want to say just candidate. I don't know what it means
okay,
either.
okay, all right. Because I've heard some people use the term candidate of record, and I was told a few times that it was, that meant that they were on record as having been candidate. Some said if you were confirmed, you call yourself the candidate of record. I've just been calling myself at this point the confirmed candidate, right? Um, yeah, I am the confirmed candidate for Thornhill.
I don't even know if I'm the candidate. I'm just assuming somebody filled out the paperwork and submitted it.
Oh,
Sorry, that lame joke. Amir, before we got started, we were talking about, why don't we start with something topical? I said that, angle your camera down, otherwise the captions will cut off your chin. And you were telling me something about the science of having captions?
oh yeah. So one of the things, so I'm with the New Generation PPC. I'm the vice president for Ontario. And if anybody that is between the ages of 14 and 25 is watching, you can come join us. It's free. It's very relaxed. It's not full to the brim with snobs. So that's wonderful. We have a few things. We have, stickers and such like that. We also, I'm going to plug this in shamelessly. We have shirts with the New Generation logo. If any of you would like to join, it's a great way to get involved with politics at a young age. It helps you network with the community. It gives you great volunteering opportunities. It's something that you can put on your resume as well. Just putting that out there. Now, one of the things that we found, because we're creating videos, trying to develop outreach, is captions are great for providing accessibility to people that are hearing impaired, deaf, etc. And also people that struggle with English, right, where it's just easier to read. I know when I listen to a video of Max speaking in French and they have French captions, I can kind of piece together because I'm semi-literate in it, right? But what's also worth considering is that there was a study done, I believe it was in the early 2010s, that found that millennials have an average attention span of 12 seconds. So that means if somebody's speaking and they are just going on and on and on, that the average millennial, by the time that I get to the 12th finger here, from when I start counting, they would tune out. A similar study was conducted a year or two ago, and it found that Generation Z has an average attention span of 8 seconds. So captions help hold on to that attention span and provide accessibility for people that may have difficulties with their attention spans. So that's just something that we've been considering. There's a whole lot of things that we're working into. We got a whole lot of ideas coming.
My takeaway from that is we got an entire generation of people with ADHD.
Oh, I mean that's definitely something to consider. I know a lot of my friends have ADHD, and one of the things that I will say that certainly needs to be looked into is supporting a generation that has more difficulty with maintaining their attention spans, right? In schooling and how it's going to affect our entertainment, our news, our politics. I think that's something definitely worth looking into.
Will do. And before moving on to you personally, since you brought it up, can you tell us what is New Gen PPC?
The New Generation PPC is the youth wing for the People's Party of Canada. We are a group of People's Party members from the ages of 14 to 25. They're looking at how can we get involved at networking with younger generations, which to many it's shocking to find that amongst Generation Z, men and women, we do the best with in terms of party support. I believe last time that I checked, it was about 11% of men that are Generation Z and 9% of women in Generation Z. So we're helping with outreach, how to help the party reach out to these groups, understand their opinions, their positions, and adapting to the new generation of politics. And the new generation is always going to change, right? So that's why it's called the New Generation PPC. We are looking into the new generation of the People's Party of Canada, which is what the party is looking towards. Unlike other parties that try to cut off any attempts at change, within the party, Max and lots of other people at HQ have made it clear that they are excited to see how the new generation PPC progresses the party in the future. So we're looking into all sorts of ways that we can help out. If you're involved in, say that you're a candidate or you're on an EDA, we have groups across Canada. We have a group in Ontario, which I'm the vice president of. We have a group for Western Canada and the territories. And we have a group in Atlantic Canada, and we have a group in Quebec. And we're here to help out any way we can.
All right, let's get the show back on track and focus on you. So Tell the audience a little about yourself.
My name is Christopher Amir Hart. You might have seen for a while I had Chris Hart as my name that I was going by. I was told that Amir Hart just looked better, and I typically go by Amir Hart. I went by Chris because it was my father's name. I thought that would just be something nice to keep with that. But Amir, kind of just go with my own thing at that point, right? Also made it a little bit difficult because he was a professor. Some of his publications would kind of go like a bit willy-nilly of, oh, doctor, or no, I'm not. But I live in Thornhill, and it's just, for those that don't know, it's a suburb out in the Greater Toronto area, and it is between, give or take, Steeles and Rutherford and Bayview Avenue to, I believe it is the 404, if I'm recalling correctly. It's all 40 something, right? And I got involved with the People's Party of Canada while it was rather fresh. I have a blue hoodie to prove it. And that was around, I'd say, early 2019. I've been trying to get involved with the party as much as I can, but obviously I was much younger then. I remember in the last election in 2021, I went to a few events. I met Max, I met a few other people there. And it was at that moment that I really saw politics firsthand, instead of just being on the sidelines and kind of just not understanding how the game actually worked and getting surprised by the results. I realized if you want to change the country, if you want to advance it, you have to get involved. And it's not as hard as you would think. It's actually rather fun. It can be challenging at times, definitely. But when you see that what your concerns are and that you can actually help people out, giving them hope or just providing them an alternative perspective, you realize it's completely worth it.
What drew you to the party in 2019?
I remember I didn't really understand what was going at the time with the Conservative leadership. All I knew is that some crazy stuff had happened here in Ontario with Doug Ford coming into power, and that there was something going on with the leadership in the Conservative Party. And I remember hearing, and I would only catch up a little bit in the headlines of Maxime Bernier doing this, Maxime Bernier doing that, and I remember it seemed like he was going to win. He had won every single one of those mini elections, if you want to call it that, within the Conservative Party race. Consistently, he had done so up until the final one before he lost to Andrew Scheer. So I didn't really understand what was going on. I just knew that apparently it meant something. And so when he announced that he was creating his own political party, I was curious. You know, a new political party in Canada, why would he do that? And he made clear why he was creating the party. And his primary issue was it was anti-corruption. He had left the Conservative Party and the opportunity to run again and very likely have been made the leader, because he understood that even if he was made Prime Minister with a supermajority, it's not just the other parties that are the problem. The corruption is also within the Conservative Party. So he created his own party, completely fresh, rejected the overwhelming demands of special interests and whatnot, and created a party that was of, by, and for the people. And consistently across the board, I saw that his policies were not just going with how can I cater to the public with demands that were not created on their own, but were crammed in by media groups, special interest, and influenced from there. For example, he was calling out mass immigration as far back as 2018 with the party, right? No other party was speaking about that. But I understood that as an immigrant as well, right, that when you have an overwhelming amount of people come into a country that were not paying taxes beforehand, the infrastructure will be overwhelmed. The taxpayer infrastructure will be overwhelmed. That's just the baseline. Going up against the dairy, poultry, and I believe it's egg cartels as well. That was something significant because I had a friend of mine who brought up how his family had been involved with seeing how these groups stifle the production of their families. I think that they had a dairy farm, if I'm recalling correctly. It was just little things like that where even though I was in school, I picked up really quickly that this was not just a person looking to get the power and then say, I'm prime minister and run off. It was somebody that was genuinely convinced he just wanted to be the primary minister to run the government and to try to fix it and give the Canadian people the best possible government that he can.
Going back to you mentioned special interests. I've had two volunteers, members, supporters of the PPC, come up to me and talk specifically to lobbying. So lobbying and special interests, they're kind of two sides of the same coin. And they said that the PPC should step up its efforts to hammer the Conservative Party. What are your views? Like, do you believe that the PPC is one of the only large federal parties that hasn't been captured yet?
I would say that in regard to special interest groups, right? My biggest concern is if you happen to be running a campaign that says, I want to get rid of taxes on apples, for example, and you have a bunch of apple orchard companies say, we want to support you, we would love to have you at events, etc. I view, in my eyes, that is just a group that had an interest there, is already in line with you. It just works from there. It's the same as just an ordinary citizen giving the money as well. It's when these groups say, hey, come to our event, look at what we can offer you. And very subtly they're saying, we'll give you money if you change your campaign in our direction. So that's my concern. With the People's Party, and I've seen this across the board, a vehemently strong rejection of being influenced by groups to change the campaigns, because the People's Party in reality acts more like almost a big tent populist party. When we were at the conference, if you can remember, that there were so many other candidates there from across the country, right? From all sorts of backgrounds, from all sorts of fields. And when we would discuss things, we would disagree on some very strong things. And there should be disagreement. If I'm running from Thornhill and what I'm running on is identical to a candidate in, say, Northwest British Columbia or far out east in the Atlantic, why are we trying to offer an identical platform, right, to totally different communities? There's higher priorities in our communities, maybe something benefits, etc. With other parties, I would say the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party have totally been taken over by these very aggressive special interest groups. The lobbyism that controls those parties has destroyed any ability for even a totally honest upcoming politician from having the opportunity to become party leader. As we saw with the leadership race back in the Conservative Party, all the significant players and such like that were backing every other candidate but Max in a desperate attempt to keep Max out. And even if Max did take over, then there's the problem of dealing with the MPs that revolt against you. When it comes to the NDP has been totally conquered by Jagmeet Singh in his horrifically greedy pursuit of his pension and whatnot. And I can go on a total rant about Jagmeet here. I don't know enough to say anything about the Bloc Québécois, in total honesty. But I will say with the Green Party, I've met many members of the Green Party. Actually, when we were working in Toronto, St. Paul's, I met one of the candidates for, I believe it was either Willowdale or Don Valley North or something like that. And it was an interesting conversation to have. I don't know enough about the Green Party. I will say one of my concerns with the Green Party is, as we understand, that suburban sprawl has had a significant effect on our ecosystem, right? I mean, of course it would. It builds onto formerly just totally natural land. If you head out east of Toronto towards Pickering. You can go to the countryside and see that there are these beautiful fields that have little roads built already into it for development into giant suburbs. So why doesn't the federal Green Party say anything about that? Why won't they push for less mass immigration? It's because both members of the Green Party are real estate investors. 56% of the Conservatives, if I'm recalling correctly from my stats, give or take 45% of Liberals, 5 NDP, including Jagmeet Singh, and all independents also are real estate investors. Not necessarily that there's a problem with being a real estate investor. I'm not saying that at all. You know, what you decide to do with your money, right? If you decide to invest into real estate, if you decide to fix up homes because it's your passion, right? That's totally acceptable. But when you're making decisions and they lean more towards a personal benefit, that's where I get very concerned and to an extent upset.
Again, you brought another topic you brought up, so let's go in that direction. Immigration. What is the Amir Hart perspective on immigration?
Well, most of my family, definitely my mother's side, right? They had my mother's side are Afghans. They had traveled with having the war happen. A long story short, they came to Canada as refugees, and across the board, even though some of the family members may disagree with even just the People's Party, of which, and let me note this, my family's been totally, completely supportive of me, even if we disagree on little things and whatnot. They know that I'm running authentically, what I believe in, that I'm not selling out my morals. So they still support it, it's great. But even the ones that describe themselves as liberals and such like that and say they will vote liberal again, they say mass immigration is far too high, that it is actually making a bad name for immigrants. We've seen a surge in xenophobia over the last few years because the standards for immigration have been totally dropped. And the reason why they were totally dropped is because you had companies that wanted to, and the lobbyists of a lot of these parties, wanted to use cheap foreign labor to exploit them. And what that left was a bunch of Canadians that were saying, I can't get a job, but I'm seeing these foreign workers have these jobs. I feel like I'm not being, the Canadian government is not representing me, a Canadian. And they are very rightfully upset with the Canadian government for doing that. With immigration, in terms of the policy, I agree with the People's Party's immigration platform, which is we'd like to have a temporary pause on immigration, right? So we can assess the effects of mass immigration, how we can adapt our system to deal with what we have right now. And then realistically, because we do definitely need to invest into providing a more livable country for younger Canadians to have families, to have that natural growth instead of the sudden growth of a new age demographic, right? They're not entering schools and such, and they hadn't paid taxes for the systems that we had, like our healthcare system. One of the reasons why it's overwhelmed. Our freeways. The 401 is the busiest freeway in the world, last time I heard. 500,000 different cars per day, and the traffic is evident. So having that pause, having that assessment, and then bringing in a reduced stream so that way we can adapt, because the number has been way too high. We can't bring it any higher. And then bringing back those old standards with a priority on supporting people that are, like my family were refugees, people that are fleeing war, people that have been targeted for death, such like that, because of their race, their religion, their sexuality, any of that. That is what a healthy immigration system does. It looks for the best to support its country, and it looks for those that have nowhere else to go to provide them with support. But we can't overwhelm our system into one direction, or the consequences will be inevitably an increase in, and these are even progressive talking points, supposedly progressive talking points, because if you look at our immigration system right now, you can't really call it progress. You can just call it deteriorated. But an increase in xenophobia, you have an increase in every single ism and ist that's going to come with it. I'm not going to list off every single one. But you also have increased tension, you have less social cohesion, you have an opportunity for demagogues to pop up in politics and you pick communities against each other. There's 100 million reasons why our current immigration system is harmful to everybody, Canadians, immigrants, even the refugees. And the People's Party of Canada is the only party that has consistently said we want to have a realistic immigration platform. We want to audit, we want to assess, and we want to provide a completely supportive model going forward.
Picking up on another thing you mentioned, the prejudice. So I think you called it xenophobia. How do we stop this? Because these, I call them bastards, like these policy makers, they're just enacting policy, bringing these immigrants in. Usually it's for, corporate greed. And then they dump them into society, and it like untethers society, and it leads to this xenophobia and this prejudice. How do we realign the messaging to say, listen, guys, yes, there's too much immigration, but instead of beating up these immigrants, let's go figuratively beat up these politicians.
Figuratively, gotta include the figuratively. Have the RCMP outside. Figuratively, let me make that clear.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people and the way social media is governing our conversation now, right? A lot of these people in social media, they make money, a lot of money from social media, and by creating very eye-catching stories. I'm studying journalism at the moment at the University of Toronto, right? And one of the things that we look at is how can we sell a story? And when you look at how some of the people reporting on issues, for example, I made a post about how that Canada had the highest rate or highest number of deaths for Indian international students, because there are many Indian international students, some of which are my friends, right? These are people that were promised that Canada was this land of opportunity with great money and great support, and that it was a way for them to achieve what my family came here for, the Canadian dream, to be able to grow and develop, and there was a safety net underneath to support you. And when they come here, they realize that they're being exploited. You have some horrible, absolutely deplorable people, if you want to go as far to say that are exploiting these students, even saying, hey, prostitute yourself for the home. There are incidences where I've seen that across the board. Friends of mine that were trying to find a place to rent, as difficult as that was for them, they would see every now and again a listing that has that. These, you have foreign workers that are totally underpaid. They're in slave-like conditions. You have international bodies reporting about the new era of slavery in Canada. And it's very important that we make clear these people are victims as well, right? Regardless of where they're from, the people that are being exploited. I think the best way that we can direct the conversation to make it clear these people are being exploited and we need to help them. That's why we have even members of the People's Party that are newcomers that are saying, and I have this conversation, funny enough, when I'm out in Thornhill and whenever I'm speaking to people, and they ask, people that are immigrants as well, they say, what is your stance on immigration? When I say we'd like to have a pause and such, they say perfect. Because they understand that there's horrible amounts of exploitation undergoing, that the name of immigrants, and that has been totally torn through the mud because of the government. It is because of the government that they totally deteriorated our immigration system. It's because of the government that they did this. It's not that the students came up with some sort of plan to manipulate the Canadian economy, and for some reason they felt like it was a great idea to undergo horrific working conditions in shared basement apartments that aren't even legal. And it's across the country that we see this. They're victims as well. Everyone's a victim in this scenario. The Canadian people are victims. The only people that benefit are the politicians that can now say to their lobbyists, hey, I gave you guys some cheap labor. Hey, developers, I justified deregulating your construction so you can print out more cheap, low-quality homes that you can sell for top dollar. And the companies that benefit from it, I remember reading that Lululemon directly told the Liberal government that they needed the foreign workers because they just wanted to make it cheaper. Now, this is from my understanding of the article, right? And it's where we come in as politicians when we're out there speaking. If the media won't report it because they have a story that they want to spin, if social media influencers won't do it because they have a crowd that they want to entertain, it's our job to get the message out there. That's our duty, to let our community know of our concerns, see how we can get involved, speak to the, even if they can't vote, the people that are being exploited by this, seeing how we can bring their voice out into the community for other people to see. At the end of the day, we're all trying. It's not that we have a different idea for Canada where one of us wants to fix it and one of us wants to destroy it. A lot of us, and I'm speaking about the citizens here, if they vote any party whatsoever, 99% of the time, they're not, nationally suicidal. They don't want to destroy Canada. They just have a different perspective on how they think things should be done. And unfortunately, the media and these political parties have manipulated a lot of people into believing that they're authentic. We are being cut off from being reported in media unless it's over a controversy that 90% of the time isn't even correct, trying to just reach out to them.
Why do you think it is the mainstream political parties are all almost perfectly aligned on this issue of immigration? In light of what you said that they want to fix the country, but they have a different perspective, but that perspective seems like it's perfectly aligned.
Oh, when I say that, by the way, I'm speaking about when people go out to vote, right? Because I know people that vote Liberal because they believe that the Liberals will help protect their jobs, that the Conservatives will break up their unions. They vote NDP for the same reason. They vote Liberal because they are not aware of how difficult things are for a lot of people. And I know some people that vote for the Greens because they are so concerned about reports about our climate and our world, right? Of which, very concerningly, a lot of those concerns were incorrect. There's no other way to put it, right? That we are trying to look to a better future, right? A greater Canada. We want to advance Canada. When it comes to why the parties have this very similar, because they disagree on kind of the smaller things or kind of the showman pieces, but on the underlying part, what's actually being completed, a lot of them share the same thing. And I would say a large chunk of it is because when you have lobbyism affect a political party, a lobbyist at the end of the day doesn't really care who wins, as long as it's the politician they influenced. And if you're a significant lobbyist, if you have a whole lot of influence across parties, then it doesn't really matter as long as they're all in your pocket. When you have members of, for example, the Liberal Party that voted in line with, and this is, I'm speaking in regard to issues such as the ban on parents that did not want to have their children, that claimed that they were born in the wrong body and that they wanted to undergo, the term is transitioning, gender transitioning. One of the concerns was held by parents is that if children aren't able to vote, if they're not able to drink, if they're not able to drive, they're not even allowed to be left on their own. How can we make sure that they're making the right decision, something that they can regret? I've had friends of mine that underwent it when they were very young, and some of them are no longer. It's a very nasty situation for them. But why would these parties vote in line on that if that's such a controversial issue? Well, it's because it makes it easier for them to market themselves. They can all claim that they got their hand in it. People will focus on that, and then when they pass these other legislations, nobody's going to notice that, for example, they didn't notice how hard the immigration system had been deregulated. They don't notice things such as there was a pretty significant development recently. I'm trying to recall. If I recall it, I'll get back to it. I just remember reading that there was a bill that had been passed and there was only a single Liberal that abstained from it. It was in regard to housing. And I need to look into why that Liberal MP was the only person in Parliament that abstained from voting for a piece of housing legislation that was, if I'm recalling correctly, very, very questionable in where it came from in terms of how deregulatory. And my family works, and the reason why I keep bringing up my concerns around construction deregulation is my family, they have worked in the construction world, right, and the engineering side, and we see a lot of developers that have a lot of influence over these politicians, and the construction work they do and the jobs that they do is very interesting business practices that can upset many consumers. Obviously, I can't, go out and say 100 million things, but that's one of my concerns I'm trying to bring up. So a lot of these parties, at the end of the day, they are just totally lobbied to high hell by the same groups. And so when they come together to pass some sensational legislation, underneath they've been passing other bits that have been eroding our country for years, that at the end of the day, the NDP can just say, oh, it was the Liberals that did that, not us. The Conservatives can say, oh, it was the Liberal government. It was under the Liberal government that happened. And that's where the erosion really is. They can play the blame game, hide what they actually did. A lot of their policies are servicing to these lobbyists go unnoticed. So when a big sensational thing comes out that sometimes, as I mentioned, a lot of MPs don't even read the damn legislation that they're passing. A lot of them don't even write it. It's written by groups. And I've spoken to people that were actually witnesses to that. You realize how dangerous it is for a democracy where you have neglectful MPs that know that they're not there actually to represent their constituents. They're there to represent who paid them to get there. So that's why I would say that seems like the uniparty, as we call it, is like that, because they're all lobbied by the same people and they come together or fight against each other on sensational topics to distract everyone from what's really going on.
I was laughing there. You mentioned a lot of the times the MPs don't write the bills. Over here in BC, we have a provincial bill, Bill 36, and within the text of that bill, it specifically authorizes the government to copy-paste legislation, not just from other provinces, but from other jurisdictions and other institutions. Like so like the government of Switzerland, or the big boogeyman is the WEF, the World Economic Forum. So that's codified in law now here.
Yeah, it's very concerning because at the end of the day, what a member of parliament is supposed to be is out of give or take, depending on where you are. I understand it's different for the territories in Prince Edward Island. Maybe it's different for other places, but on average, it is a person out of 100,000 people in this country that goes to parliament to represent the concerns of, give or take, the majority of those people, or what is necessary to help them. And when a lot of those MPs aren't even looking at what they're passing, they are not representing the people at that point. They are full-blown. It would be better for the spot to be vacant. At the end of the day, right? If you aren't given, and this is another reason why I'm with the People's Party, because I was promised something, which is that I can have an open platform. And a lot of us can, right? We, unlike the Conservatives that claim, oh, we can give an open platform. I've read it. It's like 6 minor things within major issues, and they're also sensational issues like firearms, right? But when it comes to major issues, I've been told, even from higher ups, that if I can prove that my constituents disagree with something in the party, that I'm able to go forward to the party and let them know my constituents disagree, I'm going to side with them. That's why I say I'm Thornhill's People's Party candidate, right? I am aiming to represent Thornhill in Parliament, but I'm also trying to represent Thornhill within the People's Party, right? And we're all doing that, actually. That's something I noticed when we were out, and when we were out at the conference. A lot of us were saying, here's what I bring forward. I'm from a place that has a lot of farmers. I'm from a place with a lot of fisheries. I'm from a place that's in the city. Here's our concerns. This is what we're seeing. This is what we'd like to bring forward. The Liberals don't have that. The Conservatives don't have that. The NDP doesn't have that. I'm pretty certain, if I'm recalling correctly, a Quebecois friend of mine said that the Bloc doesn't have that. And I believe that the Greens do have that, as can be seen, for example, and I will bring this up, Elizabeth May and Mike Morris, if I'm recalling correctly, that's the MP for the Greens. Let me just confirm. I want to make sure that I'm giving the right shout out. Yes, Mike Morris. They actually disagreed, and this was notable at the time, on whether or not there should be the crackdown on the Freedom Convoy. However, the People's Party is not as, and let's use the term of this, heavily influential in determining what their candidates will be running on. As we see, there's such a diverse range of us. My concern, and as I've heard from friends of mine that were Greens, that the party will make it very clear that they're going to put pressure on you and make you sweat to get on board. And if you start breaking from party line, yeah, sure, officially you can go open, but you won't have any support. The People's Party has assured me we're all going to get support.
What's your, this is an abrupt shift, but you mentioned it. What's your point of view? What's your policy when it comes to firearms?
So when it comes to firearms, right, we have that current firearm grab that was supposed to take the horrifying, dangerous firearms off of our street and reduce crime. I think about $40 million has been spent on that, and not a single gun has been taken. Why? I don't know. I think that, and one of the things that's great about the People's Party is that we want to have a complete audit of our government spending. A total and complete, so we'll know what the hell happened there. But what was the root of that firearms ban? Well, it was out of concern because there had been a horrific incident that happened out in Nova Scotia. And, well, where did those firearms come from? To my understanding, those firearms had already been illegal in Canada, that they had been illegally trafficked from the United States, and that the person had been on the radar of the RCMP, and they had failed to tackle it. And as a result, politicians trying to jump onto it with another sensational, look at me, look at what I did for you, remember that. They banned one of the most ridiculous firearms bans on the planet. For example, if I'm recalling correctly, for people at home that don't understand, there is a certain type of rifle called the Ruger 1022. Now, this is just a standard sporting rifle. It's nothing too special. If you have one that's stereotypically wooden, that remains legal. If it's carbon fiber, it's illegal. What's the difference? Minute details, minute little parts, because the politicians that wrote it did not understand anything about firearms. This puts so many people, people that were totally legal, sporting enthusiasts, because an overwhelming majority of these people are sporting enthusiasts, or they just collect it. Canada's not full of violent people. When you look at the firearms that are used in crimes, they're already illegal. And since the firearm law that had been passed, that cracked down totally, including on pistols, crime has been totally, at least it's been sensationalized to high hell. In Toronto, people are terrified. I have friends of mine that are sporting goods enthusiasts, and I've gone to places nearby to talk to the owners of these shops, and they've made very clear that an overwhelming amount of these people are sporting goods enthusiasts, that crime will keep going up because you are giving more opportunity to criminal weapons traffickers that run these rackets. Because of that, I believe that first things first, we need to repeal the overwhelming majority, at the least, if not all, of Justin Trudeau's, so since 2015's firearms. Because if we remember, in the 2000s, the firearms in the 1990s, and ever since Canada was found, firearms had not been this horrifying, crisis that we see in other countries, right? That they were owned by sporting goods enthusiasts. A lot of people have them to protect themselves. For example, in rural areas, if I'm recalling correctly, shotguns were attempted to be outlawed, and if I'm recalling correctly, a court came in to say that that was actually dangerous to the citizens out there, that they needed those firearms to protect themselves because Canada is a very unforgiving wilderness, and we have a thing called polar bears. And while they're pretty awesome, they're exceptionally dangerous, and we can't take risks with that. Recently, I understand that there was somebody who had died in Nunavut to one. So because of that, I would like to see getting rid of a majority of, if not all. Of course, I will speak to my constituents if they disagree at the end of the day, right? I'm speaking from my personal perspective on the matter that I'd like to offer them first and hear from there. And when it comes to the People's Party's perspective on it, right? As we know, they would like to open up a little bit beyond just firearms and sporting goods, allowing Canadians to defend themselves, right? Our current self-defense laws are ridiculous. It's essentially, in order to legally kill somebody, you have to prove that they want to kill you, that you were backed into a corner, no way out, and that there just happened to be something to defend yourself with. And it victimizes so many people, it puts so many people at risk, and in a place where we're seeing that increase in crime, we need to allow Canadians to defend themselves. So that's just another part that I'm throwing in there because very similar topics, right? And I would say, for the most part, that's my position on firearms legislation. And there's more to that, but like we have limited time, right?
You went to my next question, which is going to be self-defense. They've pretty much disarmed Canada, like the way you have to store your weapons, when you can use them, how you can transport them. So now they're going after knives. In Canada, if you take a knife with you with the intention of harming someone else, for example, self-defense, you can still be arrested. So what is your view on the erosion of self-defense in this country?
I think that's very concerning, especially when we have reports of especially women that are concerned that they're being targeted by groups being harassed, and even allegations that they're assaulted and such. That at the very minimum there needs to be that balance of power to be able to carry something to protect yourself with. Of course, there's the concern of somebody carrying a weapon and then using that to commit a crime, but also providing the potential victim of that crime to defend themselves, and that opportunity needs to be accepted. We're seeing break-ins happen across, I remember, and this was horrifying, this hits a little bit close. I don't know if you recall, made headlines that an automobile rapper, like WRAPPER, and serviceman, his house had been broken into. He was held at gunpoint with his family, and he had been shot in the head. He survived, thankfully. He had actually worked with my family's business before, so it really hit close to home there. And when you realize that there was really nothing that he could do because people are totally disarmed, it basically gives a monopoly on violence to the criminals, and it leaves the police almost destitute. That's why in Thornhill and other parts of Toronto, because Thornhill is the most Jewish riding in Canada, and there are other ones nearby, there's an organization that some of the members in the area that are watching might know, or Jewish members might know. There's something called Shamrim. It's a community volunteering security force, and from what I've seen, they've totally helped out community in regard to quick response times, supporting the people there. But having to have communities resort to such community volunteering, or places that don't have the ability to do that, once again, it puts a total monopoly on violence in the hands of criminals, and criminals do not care. They've already committed the crime, right? But I'd also like to just note really quickly, because I forgot to mention this, in regard to firearms. When it comes to firearms restrictions, a lot of people that have had firearms in their families are not able to transfer them. They're deemed criminals now, even for like little pieces that have been just there for a very long time. Of course, this is more impactful on a cultural level at different parts in the country, right? Another thing is we want to, and this is something I really like about the People's Party. Right now we have the Firearms Act, and it has been totally inefficient, right? We know that firearm crime is still rampant. We understand that it's been a very difficult battle in trying to deal with that level of crime. Meanwhile, legal gun owners are punished, right? We would like to, and something I'm totally in support of looking over with the support of my community, is repealing the Firearms Act and replacing it with an even more effective at combating crime, actual weapons trafficking, actual weapons crime, than people just possessing a rifle because they like to go out to hunt or just target shoot, or they just like collecting it. That's something definitely I would love to look into.
All right, let's move on to some, we're wrapping up the show, but let's move on to some more abstract questions. So I'm going to ask you this question, then I'm going to answer it, and then you can reflect and answer it again if you like. What do you think is the People's Party vision for Canada? So where do you think the party wants Canada to be in 50 years?
With a majority. But, more so than anything, I think that it wants to be, if it was just about getting to be a majority, right, why not sell out, right? It wants to be a party that is of, by, and for the people. I've spoken to the party leaders because with the new generation, we're told what would they like to see, right? They want to see a party that's of, by, and for the people, with people across the country represented, people in the territories, people all over. We want to offer different perspectives with an incorruptible party by the fact that we have open platforms, that we are so down to earth with EDAs and groups working together. And when it comes down to it, what we want to do is see Canada made strong and free. Canadians be strong and free. We want Canadians to be able to become more engaged with their community by being able to have more of their wealth available to them, which is why something I've totally looked into is, like, for example, income tax, right? And we want to have, and I'll use this term, a democratic revolution. We want to change the governance of Canada by having ourselves in there to force these anti-corruption measures. Because we can point out once in Parliament and say, hey, I know what you're doing, I know how you're doing it, and I'm going to let everyone that can't help but look at this now and see what you're doing. So that's the primary focus of the party in my perspective. I think by 2050, we would like to see a far more united Canada, right? Because we are such a grand country with all these, many parts don't even speak the same languages. It's completely diverse on that note. And we would like to see a united love to be Canadians, whatever type of Canadian that might be. And that's a few of the goals, to my understanding, of the People's Party.
So my understanding of the PPC's vision for Canada is basically sovereignty. So sovereignty starts with the individual. You can, love your spouse any way you want. You can raise your kids any way you want. You can run your business any way you want, and all free from government intervention to the extent possible. That's how I interpret it.
Oh yeah, that's part of the strong and free part. Strong, the individual needs to be strong, and free. They need to be free from being overwhelmed by people that think that they know how to live their life better than them.
Well put, sir. Final question. What do you think is the purpose? I didn't run this by you before, so if you struggle, that's fine. But what do you think is the purpose of government? What's the role of government? What should it be?
I would say across the board. So kind of to give I'll give what I think is an objective definition and what I think should be the role of the government, right? The role of a government is to manage, because citizens, some have to be farmers, some have to be doctors, some have to be lawyers, some have to be engineers, some have to be just servicemen, some have to be at any level, right? And when I say just servicemen, I don't mean just servicemen. I mean that's just what I came with there. But when it comes to governing the people, right? Because that's what it is at the end of the day. That means, in my perspective, it should be through a democracy of, by, and for the people. Who knows how to better run the people than the people? When you have a bloated group of oligarchs or even an autocrat thinking that they know all what's best, we have seen consistently across the board it's a disaster. It deteriorates in the long run. While it might be great in the short term, it totally deteriorates. And Canada's seeing that. We have a lot of people that are totally out of touch. They know more what it's like to be up in a penthouse than they know what it's like to be living on the streets. And at the end of the day, the best thing that we can do as people in the People's Party trying to advance the government is to make sure that is representing the people, that is satisfying the people. When you govern the people, that means that you are supporting the people. That is what to govern is. It's not just to control them. Control is a totally different word than govern. The best way to say govern is it is just the position of what the government is doing. And it should be service. They're called public servants. That's what they are. That's how they should be treated. They should not be having the fruits of your work.
And any final thoughts for the audience? Maybe a message of optimism?
Oh yeah, I mean the People's Party is growing. I'm seeing such strong, overwhelming support within not just in the party, but people noticing. If you want to get people involved, and this is going to be a little bit controversial to say, I know that I have my social media account and everything like that, but at the end of the day, that's good for communicating within the party. But if you would like to get out, to get people involved, to get people engaged, the best way to do that is to go out and volunteer. Going door to door is really easy, and when you're with a friend, it's just great. Being able to meet your potential representative, being able to speak to people, doing the research, reading our platform, which is very easy to read. We even have, I just have here a flyer from the event that looks over a variety of the things that we have. I have a little book somewhere here. When it comes to volunteering or getting people to sign up, it's as simple as I have many of these sheets. Purchasing merch. I have another shirt here with the People's Party from it. And I'm just going to read out very quickly. When it comes to making even donations to support the party, if you're unable to get involved in that level for whatever reason it is. For example, if you give $20 to the party, you get a tax credit of $15, so it's really only $5. If you give $400, 75% of that, $300 is tax credited, so you're really only giving $100. If you give $1,725, you get a tax credit of $650, so the real cost is around $1,000, and it does so much work for your local groups. You have no idea. Getting involved with the party is the most important thing. In the real world, that's what needs to be done. A study was done by the party that found 98% of voter conversion is through face-to-face. If we go face-to-face, if we have the conversation with our friends, if we have our conversation with our community, if we get involved in public events, even the little things, we can easily develop so much faster, and we're seeing that. That's one of the things the new Gen PPC is doing. And once again, reading the party's platform, we have a fantastic platform. We have it posted publicly. A lot of parties don't even have it updated or try to cover it up as much as possible. We have it there for you. We have it written in plain English. We have everything there for you. Check it out. Get involved. You won't regret it, and you're totally helping us out.
And where can the audience go to follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter at HARTPPC. And you can follow me, you can DM me, and voice your concerns and whatnot, any ideas you have, even criticisms. I'm totally up to hear it. And also, very quickly, I just want to say, if I can, we have an event coming up with Max if you're in the Niagara area on the 14th. It is out in Welland. It will be from 2 to 5. And it's a great opportunity to network and develop your connections. We have another event on the 28th in Durham. So that's also a great opportunity. And we also have another event in the 29th. I believe that's in London. These are excellent opportunities for people in the Southern Ontario area to network, develop, grow. It is absolutely excellent. It's great. And it's just a fun time. And feel free to speak to any of the candidates, Max even too. These are very down-to-earth people that just want to know, what are your concerns? How can we help you? That's it.
Well, you heard it. If anyone in the audience is in the Ontario region, head on over and maybe you can get the opportunity to talk to Mr. Hart. Amir, thank you very much for your time. I'm going to hold you over until after the episode, but I just want to thank you so much for coming on and telling the audience more about you.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And I highly recommend to everybody that watches this, that has seen this, watch the other shows. They're actually excellent. They give you total in-depth view of how the People's Party is actually thinking, and that's something you're not getting from other parties. We're showing you what the candidates are actually like. Mr. Ascari has done an excellent job at that. And at the end of the day, we're trying to get more transparency in the government. These types of interviews that, honestly, a lot of these, some of them put me on the spot, right? You could see that I had to stumble over, and you can see where are their strengths, where are their weaknesses. That's a reality other parties won't show you, because at the end of the day, they're not trying to sell the candidate to you, they're trying to sell the party to you. And you don't know what that party is actually selling you because they've hidden it behind their platform.
Well, thank you very much for the kind words, and we'll get you back soon.
Yeah. To everyone else, have an excellent day or night or whenever.
Take care.